Well, one player who has had some good news from this market value update, I promised there were some players who got upgrades, was of course Pedri at Barcelona, although I'm not sure Real Madrid fans will be delighted to hear that. He actually overtook Jude Bellingham, Toby, to move into joint second or third or fourth, depending on how you want to do your rankings, but he's just behind the players on 200 million euros. He moved up to 150. Talk to us a little bit about how he has kind of re-emerged, Toby, as such an important player for Barcelona, because we all know who Pedri is. We all know what he can do, perhaps more so for Spain than Barcelona, perhaps, at least from my point of view. But it definitely feels like this season he's beginning to really fulfill that potential. He's taken on a more important role at Real Madrid, at Barcelona. And that's why we've seen his market value rise by 10 million euros in this market value update.
Yeah, it gets more clear and clear that he's the engine of Barcelona from the midfield, and will also be one of the engines of the Spain national team. And as I said, it's like Barcelona is maybe the second biggest club, as I told you before, that Real Madrid is on number one, and maybe also some Bayern fans.
I can already see the comments below. I can already.
Yeah, but
yeah, your words, not ours.
Yeah, but also when you're playing for Barcelona, and maybe he's also the most coded La Masia player who never played for La Masia. He's everything you need in a number 8 or in a central midfielder, everything you want, and he's on that outstanding quality of a player. Then I think it's a good sign also for the market that he's on the same level as Vini, and it's also for us important to have him over Jude Bellingham right now. But as I said before, it can also change even when Bellingham comes back to his best form. So yeah, but Pedri, as I said, is everything you need in a central midfielder, and he's a really, really top player. And I think he also comes closer to Andres Iniesta, his idol. So he's on a very good way in that case.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I was about to mention the I word there, because Manu, that's exactly what Tobias referenced in our article, our breakdown, our analysis of the market value update on the website. It's big shoes to fill. You know, we always joke about how when people get compared to Lionel Messi, it's like a death nail to their reputation, to their career. It's the last thing you hear about them before they just evaporate into nothingness. There's a Messi for every single nationality in football, it would seem. But, you know, Tobias Baseo, our Spanish market value analyzers, rightfully says this is the guy that Pedri has to more or less become. It's the guy he has to emulate. It's the guy he himself is obviously adores as a Barcelona player, as a Barcelona fan. But that's kind of what we're talking about now. And it's interesting because we just talked about how Trent Alexander-Arnold is perhaps struggling to fill those shoes left behind by Carvajal, but we've now got Pedri finally maybe kind of stepping into that role that left behind by Iniesta.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I think it's so good that you pointed out that he's not a La Masia player, Toby, because that's what everyone thinks, right? And they forget that he actually came through Las Palmas as youth academy.
And almost went to Bayern Munich, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably correct. I think Hassan Salihamidzic tried to sign him, right, before he went to Barcelona. And yeah, I mean, he's a player who I kind of almost feel, how I'm going to put this the right way, and that is very Andres Iniesta of him. Flies a little bit under the radar when you watch him play. His influence is not always 100% apparent right away. It's also similar to Andres Iniesta. His influence is far more apparent when you do not have him on the pitch, right? The drop off that the team will have when he's not there is almost more apparent than what he does on the field, because it's not measured in goals, it's not measured in assists. I mean, I look at the stats right now: 2 goals and 10 assists in 31 games. That's not mind-blowingly good, is it? But, you know, it doesn't matter, because it's just such an important part of how Barcelona play. And especially under Hansi Flick this year, I think he's made an enormous step forward. And I think that is just, you know, where this evaluation comes from. And so when I first, to kind of go take you guys behind the scenes a little bit, when I asked Tobias Blaseo about this text, writing this text, and then I look at the market evaluation and the sheet that's given to me when I pick out the players and where we want to talk about, and I saw Pedri at the very top. I was kind of thinking, like, really? And then you like start thinking about and do your research on the player, and then you realize, okay, yeah, actually this makes a lot of sense. And but it's not something, he doesn't scream in your face, hey, I'm a world star, does he?
Yeah, but I think it's right what Manuel said. It's also like a player you really miss when you're not seeing him in your team, or when you just watch the game. For example, that's the player we want to see. But yeah, he's maybe he has not the superstar aura that I said Bellingham has, for example, but maybe he's overall the better player also. So yeah, but also it's very difficult to compare players like these, as they have players like this, like they have different strengths also, for example. But yeah, one thing I also wanted to point out with Pedri is that it's not long ago that he and Gavi were nearly on the same category, same stage, and then you can see what injuries can maybe have an impact on careers. As also Pedri is not, or it's not that he played injury free the whole time, but he always had like minor injuries, smaller injuries for most of the time. But Gavi has so many injuries that he's really trying to get back to this quality he already showed when he was younger. And he's still young, but in his first days at Barcelona. So we can also have two good examples for what injuries can do to your career, because Gavi got the next downgrade this case, and while Pedri is going to the top with his 150 million market value. So it's really, what's a good story for Pedri is also a bad story for Gavi, and it's really it's really bad how injuries affected his career. I just wanted to talk about that because they were on the same level years ago, and I find it an interesting fact.
Yeah, Gavi was once valued at 90 million euros. I think I just had it open there, the summer of 2024, and he's now worth 30 million euros. So, yeah, that's a really important point. And as Manu says, Pedri's stats maybe don't jump off the page, but that's exactly why we don't use an algorithm at Transfermarkt. We use people, human beings with eyes and knowledge of football to kind of, obviously work on our market values. And I think Pedri's a perfect example of why that's so important, because as Manu says, he won't be topping any charts for goals or assists. And if Barcelona go on to win the Ballon d'Or, he might not even be a contender, although I suppose he probably would. But, it's always very important to remember the players who aren't maybe scoring the direct goals or the assists, but are, as Toby said, the engine of those midfield.